to Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Krysta Gibson. I'm also the publisher of NewSpiritJournal.com. Now, my guest today you are used to seeing here at Keeping It Real at least once a month. And usually he is talking to us about the monthly astrological overview. My guest is Mark Dodich. But we're going to discuss an entirely different topic today. Well, maybe not entirely. But we're going to be talking about sacred travel and making pilgrimages. This is something that Mark does every few years. And I'm sure that you've seen different ads and notices about, traveling here, there, or wherever. And you've thought, well, why would I want to do that? Why do I want to get together with a group of other people and, go on a sacred sites tour? We're going to talk to Mark about that. Why do that at all? And then also astrologically, why in the new year, 2019, there's some really good astrological aspects that really support sacred travel right now. So let's talk to Mark and see what he can share with us about taking sacred journeys. Hello, everyone, and hi, Mark. Good to have you here today.
Good to be back again.
Yeah, so like I told the audience, we're doing something a little different. What I didn't tell them is you've meditated at in the Great Pyramid. You've done healing ceremonies at the Delphi Oracle in Greece, and you've worked with 3 million-year-old energies in Tanzania. So you have done some world travel. So kind of help us understand, why is world travel and going to sacred sites, what's the deal? Why is it a good thing to do?
Well, I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to, when I'm in my little office, my little house, I kind of get closed in with my little world, my little reality. And yet there is such a bigger reality out there.
Right.
And for me, travel or going off on an adventure or just stepping out of your current reality is so important that we get a bigger view of the life. And that way we're not buying into all the fears and all the stuff you see when you read the news.
Right.
And it's particularly important now there's a variety of reasons, and I won't torture you with all the astrology, but the planet Jupiter on November 8th is moving into Sagittarius for the next year. And that's like one of his favorite signs. And they both like travel, adventure, higher philosophy, publishing, the great outdoors. But more than anything, it's about expanding our belief system. And I'll tell you, between 2017 and 2020, there is just a ton of things astrologically going on that say we can't live in the old reality we've been in.
Right.
And so my view is as well, if I want to open to my belief system to a larger reality to, manifest my goals and dreams, I need to step out of my little world and see a bigger picture.
Right, right.
And the next year, that's a great thing to do. Now, of course, the other piece is, shall we say, you mentioned Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my story is before we took this group to Egypt, we rented private time in the top of the Great Pyramid to meditate and chant with like-minded people,
right,
which are things that we do on my trips.
Right.
Well, I had done all this past life regression of I knew who I was, the builder of the pyramids and all this stuff. Well, when I went there, some of that was verified, but there were other things that just like riding a camel. I didn't even want to ride a camel.
Right.
And yet when I got up on this camel, man, I will tell you, the feelings rushed to me that nothing happened in my, intellectual past life regressions
right,
that, supported that.
Right.
And so by actually going to these places, or you mentioned Tanzania, we went on safari. Well, that's where the skeleton of Lucy is, who's like millions of years old. And so there's nothing like meditating in a place where, the ancients have lived for millions of years.
Right, yeah.
You just can't intellectually grasp that. You need to go and feel it.
Mm-hmm. Actually
And
feel it.
same with Greece. Of course, we did the Greece trip as a land-based trip previously.
Right.
Now we're going to go do the water.
So you're going, let me just say in case people don't know, you're going to Greece in May 2019.
Yeah, we're going to land in Greece May 27th for 13 days. It's a small group of like-minded people, so everyone, of course, who's open to that sort of thing. We'll be meditating, doing healing ceremonies at sites, short classes. We're going to tap into people's personal astrology of what's going on there. And I always like to tie the trips into the astrology that's going on. And of course, people don't need to be an astrologer or know astrology to benefit. But we've had the planet Uranus, which is revolutions, is starting to move into Taurus. Taurus the bull. So we're going to go to Crete, which is has the oldest city in Europe, is in Crete, and it's the civilization of the Minotaur. You know, the half human, half bull.
Right.
So going there with this, Uranus moving into the sign of the bull is totally fitting. Or Plato thought that that Santorini was the remnants of Atlantis. So we're going to go to Atlantis and tune in to see if that's true for us or not.
Yeah.
Or we're going to go to a place called Delos, which is near Mykonos, Mykonos is this real popular, trendy, spendy little island. But you're not allowed to stay on Delos. It's the place of the ancients. No immortal could, die there, was the place.
Wow.
And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is probably the best archaeology site in all of Greece.
Wow.
And see, we are building up this Capricorn energy into 2020 that you'll hear all the astrologers, me included, talking about over the next year or so. And this rules ancient information. In other words, tapping into what we could call our Akashic records or ancient, who are we, what is our ancient truth, and bringing it to modern places. Well, why not go to the place of the gods? And it was the home of Artemis, who they call the god of light. So we're going to the god of light island, which you're not even allowed to stay on that island overnight. It's so sacred. You go stay in Mykonos in the day and take the ferry over for a day trip.
So how safe is it to travel now? With all the upset in the world and Americans, we hear that some places really don't like us. So how safe is it?
In my mind, there is the potential for incidents because it is the world. My experience is the worst I've seen is stuff like pickpockets and petty thefts. So you have to watch your luggage and your cameras and things like that. But all of this craziness that you see in the media, and again, I do know that, there are some bad things that happen out there. But my experience is when Americans go over there, you're treated like family. I felt nothing but safe. Now, admittedly, in a place like Cairo, which is very intense, I would never want to drive a car in Cairo. I mean, they are insane. You think American traffic is bad. Oh, my God. But from a safety perspective, people want to talk to Americans. They like to practice their English. And I will tell you, I have never felt anything but being felt like... hey, I'm family. These people want to talk. See, that's the thing about this Jupiter and Sagittarius, which rules belief systems, is we watch the news and it says stuff, this about Muslims or this about the caravans from Central America or things like that. And it tends to lose the humanity of who they are. When you actually sit down and break bread with these people, they are just as kind and nice as anyone you'd ever want to meet.
I always say people need to travel outside of the United States and Canada and Mexico even. Just get off this continent, go to Europe, because you're right. And I think, it opens your mind to other people, other ideas, other cultures. And it's so personally enriching to travel.
As an example, we'll be going back to the Acropolis and Delphi Oracle before we head out to the islands. And Delphi's out in the country. It's on the side of a hill. It's country folk out there. They probably don't even watch the news. In some of these places we'll be going. And, of course, these countries have a vested interest in making sure they take good care of their tourists because that's an income-producing reason for them to take care of the tourists.
That's right, exactly.
So in my view, the safety issue is really way overblown, and it's people's fears that get caught up. And we know what fears attract. More fear,
more what you're afraid of. So what about money? Because sometimes a trip like this can cost a lot of money, and I know you've told stories about how people who couldn't afford it found the money and.
yeah. My view is basic metaphysics 101. The universe is here to do our bidding. We just need to tap into that universal source of supply. Now, of course, to help people, I have an early bird discount. If they sign up early, the end of November, early December, they get the best price possible for their commitment.
Right.
So there's that level of it. But as an example, I had a lady at Greece who was senior citizen, fixed income. She genuinely did not have the money to make this trip, but she just felt that she was so called to do it. And so we had rented private time in the Great Pyramid, which, unless you're wealthy, you can't afford to do on your own.
Right.
But when you have a group of people, you split the cost and you go do it.
Right.
And there's nothing like private time in the Great Pyramid because you just don't want to be up there with all the tourists, and because we're chanting and meditating at our private place.
Yeah.
Well, when we came back down, at the end, you're sitting on these big blocks watching sunset over the Giza Plateau. And she says, Mark, I was so afraid to come and afraid to spend the money, but now it was just totally worth the money spent. That was the first day.
Right.
And so what happens is, like many of us, our fears get caught up in the beginning of, oh my gosh, I got all this stuff to spend my money on.
Right.
And, as I'm starting to get a little bit older, hate to admit that, I'm thinking of what's my bucket list? What are the things I genuinely want to do?
Right.
And as an example with the Tanzania trip was a spendy trip. Safari is not cheap.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm putting myself at this big risk and the people, and I didn't have enough people to go.
Right.
But once I got there, that money that was spent was like, oh my God, this is the best money I've ever spent on myself. If I were to compare that to new furniture in my house, well, I would much rather have the old furniture and have the trip to Tanzania.
Right.
Or in this case, being out on the water in the Mediterranean. I mean, of course, we're sitting here in the Northwest talking right now, and we've had our fall rains start, and it's gray and all the usual Northwest stuff. Can you imagine just being in the beautiful blue Mediterranean and the lush green hills of many of the places?
Yeah.
That's healing just sitting in it.
Right.
We have Chiron, who was the centaur, in Greece, famous teacher of healing, is moving into Aries, which is its time to pioneer a new path.
Right.
So we have some new energies that are going to be with us till 2026. So why not go tap into these energies ahead of everybody else in a beautiful, sacred, ancient place?
And enjoy them.
And again, whether they travel with me and our small group to Greece or whether they go off on some adventure on their own, I just want to encourage everybody. It's time to step beyond whatever your current level of conscious thinking is. It's time to expand for all of us.
Right.
Because not to be negative, but there's a lot of fear-based thinking going on in the world, in the media, in some of the bad things that happen in the world.
Right.
Do you want to stay focused on that, or do you want to open up to something larger?
Exactly. That's a great question, and we all need to ask it of ourselves. So if people want more details on your trip and how they sign up, we encourage people to take a trip or whatever works for you. But if you are interested in traveling with you to Greece, how do they find out about it?
And it's worth a look, see whether they want to go with me or they want to go on their own.
Right.
But the itinerary and the pricing, and as I say, there's early bird pricing if they sign up sooner. If they go to the website, astromark.us, astromark.us, there'll be a link to the Greece site and the link to the registration and like about a 7-page itinerary and registration.
Neat.
And
So
all the prices and details are there for them.
That's cool.
But there's nothing like, I tell you, you'll meet people that you'll know for a long time on these trips, and there are people who are like-minded people. It's not like you're going with a bunch of strangers, even though you don't know each other.
Right.
They're all people who are interested in spiritual growth or opening up to a larger sense of soul service.
Right. Make new friends. Yep.
Big difference as opposed to, being with, not negative, but being with people that are strangers who don't even share your philosophy.
Right. Yeah. To go with a group of like-minded people who have similar interests just makes it that much richer, because you can share it together, talk about it together, and you likely make new friends. You know, after the trip is over, it's not uncommon for people to stay friends for years just because they went on a trip together. So it's kind of cool that way.
And not to mention all the beautiful photos you'll have.
Oh my God, yes. And memories.
So we're going to start in Greece on May 27th, which means we leave on May 26th from the U.S. We'll spend a few days in Athens, and then we'll head out to the islands, Crete, Santorini, Mykonos, Delos, a very exotic energy. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll grow. And by the time we come home, our perspective on the world will have changed so much.
Absolutely.
And believe me, I've experienced this with every trip. I come home and my reality has shifted.
I'll bet.
So, yeah, at the very least, it's worth checking out at astromark.us. And
fabulous. Well, thanks so much for sharing all this information. And I encourage people to check out your website and check out the trip. And like we both said, even if they don't want to do that, find a way to break out of your everyday reality and do something different and open your world. So, thank you so much, Mark. We will talk again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.